That's going to be August 12th, and that's going to be live. And then the next month after that, the first Thursday in September, it looks like we may have Judge Hidalgo as our speaker at the same venue at that luncheon. Before we start today's program, I'd like to introduce Odus Evbagharu, who's the Harris County Democratic Chair as of what, about a month? Is it a month you've been on board, Odus?
Yeah, it's been a little over a month. So,
and you're off to a great start. I understand you've passed the $100,000 mark raised since you became chair in less than a month ago.
Yes. Thank you so much for that. Yeah, and we've definitely hit the ground running. We got work to do. We have work to do, and as you can see with our members in Washington, D.C., grateful that Rep. Johnson, Jarvis Johnson, and Rep. Ann Johnson, who make up the Johnson family in the State House, Rep. Rosenthal, and now Penny Morales Shaw has joined us as well. They're in D.C. fighting the good fight, and we have to do the same thing on the ground. We have to support them, and so anything we can possibly do, whether it's gaining sustaining memberships, which, by the way, you can join at harrisdemocrats.org to become a sustaining member as low as $10 a month. We're going to do it. And so we've hit the ground running, and we're excited, and we got some work to do in 2022.
And notice I follow you on social media, and I noticed that before it became public, you were one of the first people out there calling for the legislators to do what they did and walk. And I appreciate that. And I appreciate your leadership on that. What can our members do to help the representatives who are in DC right now?
No, our members can do a lot. One of the things that we're doing at the party, and to backtrack a little bit, I'm just following the lead of our legislators. A lot of our legislators, particularly our Black and brown legislators, were on the forefront of walking the first time. And then walking the second time because they understood democracy was at stake. Our freedom to vote is at stake. And so anytime you can follow the lead of our courageous legislators, we're going to do it, and we're going to amplify their voices. And that's exactly what we can do on the ground. As HCDLA, a proud club and org of the Harris County Democratic Party, that's what we should be doing. They have a fund called the Freedom to Vote Fund. Please donate, give. We gave $5,000 to that fund as a party because we understood the need and the necessity to back them up, not just amplifying their voices on social media, but financially as well too. Many of them are sacrificing their time, their family time, vacation time to take off because it was an intense 6 months in the legislature. So anything you can do financially, amplifying their voices on social media, but also most importantly, the Whisper campaign. Talk to your friends, talk to your neighbors, highlight what they are doing. There's a lot of misinformation out there by the Republican Party that is factually just false. And so we have to do our job of making sure that the information is right. And that's what we did Monday. We had our Save Our Democracy rally with all of our Harris County delegation, and they were able to provide factual information to the people so they can go forth and tell their family, their neighbors, and their friends. So amplify their voices, donate to the Freedom to Vote Fund. I believe it's on the Texas House Democratic Caucus website. I'll put in the chat as well too. Support your local party as well too, and just amplify their voices.
All right, thank you, Odus. Chris, are you almost ready to go? He may not be with us for a minute, so we may have a minute to fill. And after I introduce Chris, if he's not ready to go, what we're going to do is go to a live feed of the committee meeting that's going on right now that Representative Thompson and others are testifying before until Chris is ready to go. But before we do that, let me tell you a little bit about Chris. I think you all know him from the good work he did and as elections chief in Harris County and the innovative programs he implemented, which the legislature has tried to gut and resulted in the walkout and the Democrats being in Washington right now. Chris is a graduate of Hightower High School in Missouri City. He also went to Morehouse College for undergrad, and he got his JD MBA through a joint program at Yale Law and Harvard Business Program. He was a consultant with McKinsey and Company. He worked in the Obama White House in the Office of Personnel. He is the principal of Hollins Law Group. He recently opened a restaurant. He's on the boards of Metro, Interfaith, and other organizations. And in 2020, he was named one of Houston's most fascinating people. And if Chris is not ready to go, he does look like he's ready to go. You ready to go, Chris?
I'm ready.
I'm going to turn it over to you to moderate and introduce our panel. Thank you.
Absolutely. A pleasure to be here this afternoon. And part of the bio you missed there, Steve, was that I'm a proud member of HCDLA. And so, very excited to be moderating this panel this afternoon. And so it's my pleasure to serve as moderator. And before diving in, just want to talk a bit about some of the folks who are here with us this afternoon. We have Representative Ann Johnson, representing District 134. I think many of us as attorneys know Ann quite well and supported her in her run in 2020. But in addition to all that she's done as a freshman, she is a former human trafficking prosecutor. She's been a teacher and also a small business owner. And so we're so proud that we flipped 134 here in 2020 and that we put someone as remarkable as Ann Johnson in office. Not to be outdone, we have Jarvis Johnson. Representative Johnson serves District 139. And Jarvis is a proud TSU alum. The last time we rubbed elbows was at the sort of the inauguration ceremony of TSU's new president. He's also a community organizer, an entrepreneur, a strategist, and a consultant. Representing District 148, we have Representative Penny Morales-Shaw, another proud attorney, and so we have a well-represented bunch here. Penny is dedicated to advancing the health and well-being of working families and children. Also a freshman this year, and we're so proud to have her with us. And then finally, last but not least, Representative John Rosenthal. Rosenthal was part of the legendary class that moved in after the 2018 blue wave here in Harris County. He held on to his seat by a very tight margin, and it's so important that the folks of Northwest Houston and Harris County have John Rosenthal as their representative. It's important to have him in that seat because he has the background of an engineer and a petroleum engineer at that, and so certainly brings a practical nature with him to the State House. And he's done a phenomenal job of building relationships across the aisle since he's been there in Austin. And so I'll start with you, John, with a really tough question. Why are you not in Austin right now doing your job as a state legislator?
Well, first, thanks so much for having me. I would say I am totally doing my job right now, representing the people of Texas, representing the people of my district and our constituency, defending their freedom to vote here. We came to an impasse, simple as that. And instead of allowing Republicans, instead of allowing the majority party to just steamroll us, ram anything they wanted to down our throat, they were obviously not collaborating in good faith. They refused every amendment in a 24-hour hearing on this voter bill. They got all sorts of egregious stuff in there. And we are here looking to urge, to highlight national attention on this issue, to urge the Congress, particularly the Senate, to act on the For the People Act, the John Lewis Voting Rights Enhancement Act, to get some basic guardrails in place. So the Texas cannot continue to forward its history of voter suppression and unconstitutional voting guidelines, laws, and gerrymandering.
Thanks so much, Representative Rosenthal. And for those in attendance, I'm going to ask a few questions to kick us off, but I think it's most important for you all to hear directly from these representatives. So please put questions in the chat, and very soon we'll move over to getting your questions directly asked these representatives. Representative Jarvis Johnson, for those who are not familiar, and I know many of us are, talk to us about the importance of breaking quorum, why that tactic was necessary in this situation, and at the end of the regular session, why you all took this step, and why this is so sort of important and a sharp tactic for you all to use.
And I think, to put it in street vernacular and street terms, we just got tired of being bullied. And at the end of the day, this entire 87th legislative session was a bully session for Republicans. They literally drove the dump truck up to the dais and dumped everything on us. Everything. There was no compromise. There was no negotiation. There was nothing that was happening that represented all Texans. The legislation that they put forth was simply for a select group of their voting base, and what I believe to be a very small minority subsection of their base. I don't think, and I'm trying to be optimistic, but I don't think that the Republican Party is as hateful. The people of the Republican Party is as hateful as the legislation that they're putting forth is. And so I think it was that opportunity for us, the last ditch effort, to simply say we can't continue to be bullied. There's been no talks. There's been no, no negotiations, no communication. So therefore, we can't continue to have harmful legislation. And so we collectively got together and realized that the legislation that the Republicans were putting forth for voting would impact generations to come. And for somebody like me, which I've talked with my mother when I was a kid, and she constantly, put into my head the importance to fight and make sure that we never allow that type of era in America to happen again. And I truly believe that's where the Republican Party is going. They literally are trying to disenfranchise people at a greater scale. I think that they're literally taking away people's opportunity to vote and simply saying, no, we're looking at integrity. The fact is that the Secretary of State said that the voting in Texas was fine, that there was no fraud, and yet the Republicans all of a sudden decided we need to protect our voting boxes, only because of the big lie put forth by the president, the former president. And so here we are. And so we had to take a big, bold step, and I hope that is a step that has reinvigorated the Democratic Party to want to get involved and no longer sit on the sideline and just allow things to happen. And so I think the Democratic Party and what we decided to do is to start making things happen. And so this is exactly what we did. And so we moved to break quorum. And I think we've seen how it has been very successful for us, because now the Republican Party is starting to say, we're willing to listen, and we're willing to make change, and we're willing to make amendments. We even heard in the small clip that they showed with Congressman Fallon, who used to be a part of the ledge, that, we're going to make changes. And we've seen changes made. We've seen that they moved the times. We've seen that they've taken away the judge's ability to overturn an election without any evidence. And now they're willing to look at the mail-in ballots and how they don't need both sets of ID. And so it's a lot of things that we've done that I think we've moved the needle.
Absolutely. And if it wasn't obvious, my question earlier to John was in jest. Obviously, you all are up there working hard in DC. And so Representative Ann Johnson, give us a little bit of the inside scoop. Talk to us about your experience up in Washington so far. What's been going on, what types of conversations you all are having, what's inspired you, and what obstacles you still see in front of us.
Well, just like my colleagues have said, we are unified and very proud where we are. And we got into a position where we had to leave Texas in order to continue doing our jobs, because we knew what would happen. That the governor then said, I want to cabin these people. I want to arrest them. I want to put them in their chairs. They would have passed what would be an extreme voter intimidation bill, which would disenfranchise hundreds of thousands of people from the freedom to vote. And so our presence here in DC, by leaving the state, allowed us to continue to advocate and voice the concerns of all of the Texans that came up to testify against this bill. It was an overwhelming 6-1 margin of those that said that this bill would provide hurdles for the disabled, for the elderly, for communities of color. Chris, they wanted to undo just about everything you did in Harris County with regard to 24-hour voting, drive-through voting, which had a disproportionate good impact on communities of color and women. And they wanted to make that stop. Since we got to DC, from the moment that we touched down here, we have been engaging in conversations with Congress, with advocates. We've been at events and rallies where we are seeing this spark of democracy, of across the nation, people recognizing that we absolutely have to stand up to what is trying to take place in every state. We've met with Leader Schumer, with Senator Manchin, with Senators Klobuchar and Reverend Senator Warnock. And I'm proud to tell you that yesterday the news broke that they are working on a new piece of legislation to try to actually advance voter protection, understanding that we are on a short clock. Time is running out, and we need these guardrails put in place to shore up Sections 2 and Sections 5 of the Voting Rights Act, which have recently been devastated by the U.S. Supreme Court's rulings in Shelby County and Bronovich.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Ann. And Representative Morales-Shaw, great to have you here with us this afternoon as well. And so, you know, you all have been up there now for a bit of time. I think Penny may have just dropped. Oh no, we have her pin here. And so talk to us about, you know, looking forward, what that path is. What is Texas Democrats' plan over the coming weeks and even beyond? Help us sort of understand what the strategy is. And if she did drop, then Representative Rosenthal, why don't you help us out there?
Yeah, she has dropped. I'll bring her back in if she reappears.
Okay, I'm happy to take the question. There we go. I'm unmuted. We are actually reinvigorated this week. We've had those members that were quarantined before have rejoined the group. We have resumed in-person meetings. We're empowered by a very rigorous testing and validation regimen to make sure that everybody is safe and secure. So we have resumed in-person meetings with legislators and advocates. It's been a real shot in the arm, I feel like. You know, it's hard to be away. It's hard to live sequestered in a hotel. People ask me how you like Washington. I'm like, it's like any other hotel I've been in, you know. But the strategy is to keep driving, to keep pushing, to keep moving the needle. And we see with senators drafting combined legislation that our presence here is most definitely having an effect. And these folks are all individuals that we have met with, that we have made our case to. And by highlighting the issue and keep pushing, keep driving, we intend to drive for a positive outcome to the best of our ability, and we are not giving up. You know, the only time you fail is when you quit.
Absolutely. Thank you, John. And Jarvis, what is, I'm hearing a lot of optimism right now from you all. What are your thoughts on sort of our current odds of success? You know, we're lawyers, we're a practical bunch, right? There's seemingly two paths here. One is getting 60 votes in the Senate. The other is to reform the filibuster and get 50 votes or something less than 60. Are either of those paths viable right now? Do we see success in the near future?
A long shot doesn't mean impossible. And while I think everybody continues to talk about this being a long shot and this might not be able to happen, and why are you guys doing this if, you know, inevitably they're going to win, you know, then I don't understand why Buster Douglas got in the ring with Mike Tyson. I don't know why NC State played U of H. You know, I don't know why Tampa Bay Buccaneers, you know, played the game when they weren't even supposed to be in the Super Bowl. But at the end of the day, they all prevailed because they believed in themselves and they believed and they pushed forward. And they didn't get scared. And they didn't get intimidated. And one of the things that I will continue to reiterate to my colleagues, I will continue to remind them that this is not a fight for us. This is not a fight for, while we all want to protect our seats and we all want to, you know, we all really care about what oftentimes the community says. I oftentimes try to remind them that our community stands 100% behind us. And while the Republicans love to point the finger and say that we're derelict in our duties and we should be back doing our job, you know, at the end of the day, much like, and I have to give our Republican colleague credit, Representative Larson has said it, you know, if they were in the minority, they would have done the exact same thing. The fact that the filibuster is no different than what we did. The fact that Ted Cruz built his name on a filibuster and then tries to criticize us for breaking quorum. I don't see the difference in the two. So I think the more we remind people, our colleagues of the fight and the good that will happen and how we have already moved the needle and how we've already moved some legislation, I'm truly encouraged and we're all really encouraged to know that this thing can continue and we're going to fight. It's not trying to make, you know, this poison drink better. That's not what it is, because it's still poison. We really want to change it altogether and throw it out the window, not to simply continue to make small, slight changes, but really to kill it. And if we can have some real dialogue with the governor, if we can have some real dialogue with our Republican colleagues, then let's do that. But we have to make sure that we stay steadfast. We had a great meeting with Martin Luther King III and Reverend Sharpton yesterday. And one of the things that I asked both of them to do is to come talk with this group and explain to them the civil rights movement and the number of sacrifices that people had to make and how the other side was picking people off and, you know, making bribes and giving out gifts and letting them know it could be better, or even threatening and to pick people off. But a lot of people realized that that was just a tactic that was not going to stop the efforts to make change in America. And so I think that's where we are today. This is our civil rights moment, and we have to stay steadfast. We have to continue to push because some things will happen, you know, what impacts some may not impact others. And but we do know it's all negative, and we do know that it's all bad. And so we have to truly, we have to kill this type of hateful, harmful legislation that is creating this great divide in this country.
Thanks so much. I think that's a really important point, Representative Johnson, that, you know, all these fights aren't going to be easy. And frankly, if it was easy, somebody else would have done it already. And we can't simply not show up because the odds are against us. And so, again, we're deeply grateful for your boldness, for your vision, for the leadership of each of you all, and the sacrifices that you're making. And as we look forward, you know, I'm no expert on how Congress or the Senate works, but you read in the news that says, oh, if they're going to act on this, they have to do it by, you know, this recess or by this month or what have you, or else other items are going to take it over. Is there any sort of thinking along those lines of when Congress might have to act on this for it to sort of have a good chance of moving?
Chris, was that directed towards me?
Jump in.
Yes, ma'am.
Chris, if I can jump in while I have a connection.
Yeah, please do.
Because this is my third attempt. I'm hoping it's a charm. First, thank you. And I don't know what's already been said, so hopefully I'm not going to repeat. But to your question, in the various meetings that we've been having with the different senators and even at committee hearings like we were at yesterday with Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, we get different indications, but the general consensus is that right now Congress is consumed, or they were consumed, with the bipartisan omnibus infrastructure bill, which was supposed to be finished up the beginning of this week. Then they had to move on to budget because the budget has to be reconciliation. But what we have heard is that, especially in the last few days, that our presence has put HR 4 and HR 1 in the forefront of the conversations. We were told, I think just yesterday, that since January, it's been sort of slow pedaling in the background, not really in the forefront of people's minds, just kind of out there in the ether. And since we've been here, it's become a top burner topic where their staffs are talking about it, they're moving on it. They're, obviously you heard about the mansion revised proposal. So if you want exact timelines, obviously we want them to act on it before our special session ends, which is midnight on the 6th of August. That would be ideal. Will that happen? We don't know, but the last couple of days have been very encouraging, just letting us know that it's our presence here is having a huge impact, not only on Congress members here, but across the nation. So I hope that sheds some light on that question.
Absolutely. Thank you, Representative Morales-Shaw. And Jarvis, talk to us just about the support that you all have received. I know you've had conversations with civil rights leaders, but just in terms of, what Texans back home have done to show the support for what y'all are doing, the calls that are coming into your offices, the care packages, just help us to understand, this outpouring of support for you all while you've been up there.
I will say this, what we need to do is, and it's been overwhelming here. It's been really heartwarming and it's really made us feel good. And it's really helped us to stay together collectively as a unit. But in order for us to continue this, we have to have that real support because we have to change the narrative. We have to look at this like it's a campaign because we do understand that there is a negative campaign against us. We do understand that the Republicans are literally on the heel right now, telling lies as they try to have that aha, gotcha moment with our colleagues that are there to simply testify on the truth and the merits of the bill. But the fact is that the Republicans see it a different way. We have to get on this campaign to send the message out, not only in Texas, but across this country. I've been calling on all caucuses across this country to support our efforts. And the care packages are great. Don't get me wrong. I'm not being ungrateful, but we really need the money in the coffers so that when the special session, as I was looking at the comments in the chat, the governor is going to continue to call session after session after session. And we know a lot of that is just conjecture. We just know that's him pandering to his base because he can't keep doing it because he's going to look crazy. He's going to look bad because it looks like he's losing. And so his opponents are going to beat him up. But we have to continue. And so as the question that you asked is, about the support, and it's great, but more importantly, we need more. We have to, because I think if this group knows that we have the resources, so if we do need to go to the next place, that we have the resources and we have the campaign to do so and to make sure that the dialogue is there and the accurate and correct information is gotten out to the masses as opposed to the whisper campaign or the social media. But it needs to be, because the media is going to calm this down over the next couple of days. Next couple of weeks, probably. It's going to start waning as it already has. But we have to keep it at the forefront because this is the most important thing of our lifetime to fight for. And so we need that support. We need that help. And Odus has put it in the box about what we need and how they have contributed, but we certainly need a lot more support so we can keep this fight going.
And Chris, if I could add on to that, what Jarvis just said, I would say that we have a tremendous amount of moral support. We have spent the last few days with incredible people, freedom fighters, who have done this for decades, and they are cheering us on. They are putting things into perspective for us just to remind us of how important this fight is. We've spent time with Reverend William Barber. We spent time with Stacey Abrams today. We spent time with Beto. We've spent time with the Clintons. And so we have a lot of that moral support, that's really helping us stay resolute in our determination. I think to add on to what Jarvis said, what would be really helpful is to really keep the messaging out to our people, to people in communities, to everyday working people, so that they can understand why we're here And the more we can spread that to everyone that's on this Zoom and listening in, the more we understand the issues and we share them with our neighbors, our friends over coffee, our coworkers, the more people can understand that this is about them. It's not about us and the other party. It's about you and your rights and your kids' rights and your grandkids' rights in the future, and how our nation will look if we allow them to trample over our basic rights like voting rights. Because everything, and I've said this before, everything that we see in our session, regular session, special session, is birthed at the ballot box. What does and doesn't happen at the ballot box results in who's elected, who has the majority, what's on people's priority list, what's on the governor's priority list. That really starts with people. And a lot of times people, rightfully so, feel disenfranchised. But we hope that our actions are not only reaching the activists, the other elected offices, the organizations like this one, but that they're reaching everyday people so that we can have their support as well once they understand this is really about them.
Absolutely. And Penny, I'm going to focus on you just in case we have another technological challenge here. The national news has been all over this, right? The Boston Globe, the Washington Post, the Wall Street Journal. Have you sensed that same level of attention being paid here at home as, the Chronicle, the local news? Have they been covering this to the extent that you think that they should?
I think that they're doing their job in covering everything. I do wish that it was a little more coverage. And I say that because I had someone who's very involved in the community back home say, I wish we knew more. I wish we knew day to day what's happening. They want to know like the play by play, right? And we all try to post stuff on our social media to keep things, but the news is kind of that broad reach tool that everybody kind of gets either when they're driving to work or when they're driving home, or if they catch something on the TV. So that really helps us, as well as the papers. I know that the Texas Tribune, Texas Monthly, the Chronicle, the Dallas Morning News, those have all been papers that have done a lot of coverage about what's happening here. But can we have more? Do we wish there was more? Yes, because this is a paramount issue that affects everybody's lives. So there should be continuous coverage, and we'll do what we can to cooperate with the media as much as they're willing to cover this.
Hey, Chris, can I say this? I've read more quotes from Ann Johnson in the Texas Tribune than I have in the Houston Chronicle. I'm just saying. At the end of the day, I read more quotes from my colleagues from other parts of the state than my own colleagues in Houston. So I wish there would be more quotes and more dialogue with the Rosenthals and the Johnsons and the both Johnsons and and Shaw and Miss T and all of us. But at the end of the day, I've read more quotes in the Texas Tribune on Ann Johnson than I have in Chronicle. So I think they can do better. I absolutely think they can do a lot better.
Yeah, one specific question, and then we'll dive into some of the questions that are coming from the audience. You talked about the need for tangible, resources up there. And so two questions, one, any idea, how long you're prepared to stay there? Is it September, is it October? What is it? And then number two, for anybody who knows the answer to this, what's sort of like the weekly or monthly burn rate? Like how much is it actually costing us? How many resources do you need to continue this fight up there?
Well, Chris, can I jump in on that one? Because it is really important that everybody recognize not only what is happening to us now, being out of state so that we can continue to advocate on your behalf, but you also need to know that the governor has defunded the legislative branch come September 1. My commitment is to keep my staff and keep their insurance, and I'm going to have to do that through my campaign funds. But I think it's incredibly important that the constituent services that we provide are allowed to function beyond the governor's threat and his dismantling of your co-equal branch of government. And so that's going to put the strain on all of us individually. And so it's my understanding that those are commitments that we're going to have to personally make. So I'm sure that each one of us appreciate you supporting each of our individual campaigns, because we each may face an additional burden of taking on the consequence of continuing to let the government function through our personal campaign levels, or if not, we'll have it there for when we need it in upcoming campaigns. And then for our presence here, the House Democratic Caucus is accepting contributions that come through them that are supporting things like our living expenses and food expenses at the moment. But it is incredibly costly. And so thank you for participating and helping us. But it's also important to remember that you have a governor that is going to forcibly fire and shut down every public sector and each district that provides constituent services for unemployment, for child support, and other grievances of which we help out, because he did not get voter intimidation, voter suppression. This is a dangerous level, and why we are all united in fighting against it, because it really does strike at the heart of our democracy.
And that's a perfect segue into a real law question. What's currently the status of the litigation that's related to the governor's defunding of the legislature?
So it's my understanding that litigation is still pending. And we're still waiting for the Texas Supreme Court to rule. I think there are a number of hurdles or things that could change between now and September 1. But I know my colleagues and I all got the letter from our admin letting us know that they were going to start the process of canceling leases, canceling phone numbers, and getting rid of basically our district offices and access to constituent services. I hope that the Texas Supreme Court and all 9 Republican Supreme Court will have the courage to go against their party and rule in our favor, which this is clearly an unconstitutional act. If you look at the briefing, if you look at the case law that has come before, this is clearly an overreach where the governor has used a line item veto to effectively deny the separation of powers. And interesting enough, when you read that briefing, we actually have stronger constitutional supports within our Texas Constitution than there are federally. So if the Texas Supreme Court follows the law and does the right thing, I would assume we should win. But unfortunately, in this moment of time of politics that we are seeing, I'm not optimistic that they will do the right thing. I hope I'm wrong.
Yeah, and one of the, outside of voter suppression and critical race theory and so many other important topics in this special session, one of the things that has not been addressed yet is redistricting. And so Representative Rosenthal, have you heard anything? Is there any idea about, when redistricting might be handled in special session, or, is there a possibility of that just being further kicked down the road? Do we know if redistricting will absolutely happen before the 2022 election?
We know that our Republican colleagues are chomping at the bit to redistrict the state before the 2022 election, because it will benefit them. There are a number of tight districts, like mine, but there's a number of tight districts where they are at risk. So we know that they have a huge motivation to get that done before the next election. There's some legal work going on right now trying to put that off until after the next election, because there's very specific, and I'm no constitutional scholar. Remember, I'm an engineer, not a lawyer, but it's my understanding there's very specific language in the Texas Constitution that calls for the redistricting to happen in the next regular session following the data being provided by the census, and that we are already past that. That ship has sailed this session. So if they do it, if they do forward redistricting maps in the special session, that will likely be September, October, depending on when we actually receive the detailed data from the census. Now, the other side of that is the congressional maps do have to be drawn in advance of the next federal election. So that those have to be done. But it's my understanding that ours, according to the Constitution, are not supposed to be done until the next regular.
If I can add on to that, I heard recently that the August 16th is the day we're supposed to get the official numbers from the census, and so that the governor can call a special right after that is what we expect. I also want to tie that in and mention that HR 1, one of the things that was mentioned yesterday at one of the committee hearings was that one important part of HR 1 that is really important for every state is establishing the independent redistricting commissions and us as legislators having a say in those commissions, just to tie that in together.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a great, point there, because I'm assuming, right, potentially wrongly, that the folks who are on this call know exactly what you all are asking for while you're up there in DC. And so, what are some critical parts, Penny, of a potential For the People Act that you think are absolutely necessary for us to preserve democracy, not only here in Texas, but across the United States?
Yeah, and I hope we can all chime in. We only talked about a few yesterday. It's kind of an omnibus bill. It has a lot, but that one is huge. The Independent Redistricting Commission, automatic voter registration, for example, so that it's across the board. Of course, pre-clearance is the biggest part of HR 4, and it can be part of another bill too, but that's a huge part of it. And so that's why it's not either or, it's both and, right, is what our hope is. But I would see if anyone else wants to chime in any other parts of HR 1, because we've heard a lot about that bill.
Well, I want to add in on the nonpartisan, independent redistricting board, because this would be a huge thing in the heavily gerrymandered states, and Texas, Texas GOP has been scientific, diabolical, and very, very precise in their approach to gerrymandering. We know that the predominant population growth in this state is people of color, Black and brown people, and folks moving in from other areas. And yet, we do not gain any seats so those folks can have appropriate representation. Still in the minority, even though the state is a majority minority state. Just walk onto the House floor and you can see what the makeup of our body is. And they do this, by gerrymandering districts, and they do the same thing to an even greater degree in the federal, the U.S. representative districts. Goodness gracious, those things are crazy shapes. And how you have 5 representatives, out of Texas from the Austin area, from Travis County, which is the bluest part of the state, everyone knows it, and 4 of the 5 are Republicans. That's some magic right there, y'all. And so if we want the people to choose their representatives instead of representatives choosing their people, this is going to be one of the most important parts of the legislation moving forward, is to have nonpartisan redistricting, because that really, again, strikes at the heart of democracy right there.
Yeah, so Chris, and you mentioned the For the People Act is the one that you talked about, that we need to get around the filibuster or find a carve out around the filibuster. And that is the one that has kind of all the bells and whistles. It requires that there be independent redistricting. It takes dark money out of campaigns. It does quite a bit sweeping across the nation. And then the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, which is that HR 4, which has not yet been filed in the House this time. It was filed and passed last session. And so that's where we are now with whether or not that's going to get through. And as you know, that is putting back our pre-clearance levels, which traditionally look at the numbers on which states have had a discriminatory impact on communities of color in violation of the Voting Rights Act. And so right now you have the process of the Department of Justice trying to get the information to the Congress so that they can determine which states and what formula would need to apply. And so what we've been starting to hear up here is how they can move faster, or how there can be some level of retroactivity, given the fact that redistricting is going to happen very soon, not only in Texas, but across the nation. And so in all of these meetings that we've had, I think what is overly abundant and clear is that whether it's Senator Manchin or others, at the heart, everybody knows that we have to shore up the Voting Rights Act, and we need some consistency across our states because of all of the legislation. It's not just Texas. We already saw in Georgia where they criminalized giving somebody a bottle of water who's waiting in line. But we're not the only state. It's happening in every state. And that's why you are seeing this rush to it. What's disturbing is that in the past, every time we had a reauthorization or a shoring up of the Voting Rights Act, it was overwhelmingly bipartisan. But as you can imagine this time, it's not. It's an extreme partisan division that you can't have logical conversations around facts. And that is why we absolutely need this federal response. And so I'm, again, very excited by the news that came out yesterday that the Senate is working on, again, a new piece, however they can get it done, which combines both of these bills and tries to give us as much support as we can right now in this immediate term. Because just as everybody on this call knows, redistricting is going to change the landscape for a decade. And with what we've seen they're willing to do, or the links that they are willing to go to show loyalty to Trump in the absence of fact or constitutional oath that's been taken, we absolutely need support across the board.
Yeah, and you
I think
mentioned the pre-clearance aspect, and that would certainly put a pause to some of the legislation that's being pushed through here in Texas. But in terms of that, that legislation that you all are, breaking quorum to deny right now, isn't that just a good-natured election integrity bill, in addition to, slapping Harris County on the wrist for all that crazy stuff they did in 2020?
No. And so, of course, I was honored to be on the select committee that was part of those 23 and a half hours and dug into the new House Bill 3. Don't forget, when we broke quorum in May, and we broke quorum, and everybody said, why are you guys breaking quorum? This is just election integrity. And then when we broke quorum, it was able to shine a light on the legislation. And then everybody recognized, wow, they're dismantling souls to the polls. Wow, they've created a system in which a judge can overturn the election results. And when people realize what they put in there, now all of a sudden, every Republican is backtracking, and no one will admit who put those provisions in at the dead of night. Yet at the time, they were saying there's nothing wrong with this bill and pass it. So here we are again with a bill that got thrown on us 24 hours before the hearing, of which hundreds came to testify against. And you see changes within the mail ballot application. You see changes where, as Harris County did, mailing out to people just the application to get a ballot. They've now said that you can't do that. They've shut down 24-hour voting. They've shut down drive-through voting. And all of these are conveniences which were used in the urban communities. And those urban communities, of course, are significantly communities of color, which is absolute disenfranchisement of communities of color. And in the case of drive-through voting, 60% of the people that use drive-through voting were women. And that makes sense because they may have kids in the car. They may have an elderly individual or disabled individual that they are caring for, and it made it more convenient. So as all the lawyers on this call know, when you're talking about voting rights, when you grant somebody access to something and then you take it away, you are making it harder to vote. And that's exactly what we're seeing here. And then we saw in the committee that they say, well, 24-hour voting and drive-through voting, those were just pandemic issues. We don't really mean for them to apply. Well, look at the hypocrisy of the Republican Party. Look at alcohol to go. That was a pandemic convenience. And that was the #1 priority of Governor Greg Abbott. It was the first thing that got through the session, and it was the first signing ceremony. So the whole idea that we can't learn and grow through the pandemic and make it easier to vote is absolutely illogical and not right. What's most concerning is the poll watchers and the threat of poll watchers. And so if you haven't, please watch Ms. T, the Dean of our House Caucus, Representative and Chairwoman Senfronia Thompson. And she talks about the intimidation that she recalls and many other members recall from their parents back in the days of true Jim Crow. This poll watcher provision allows political partisan poll watchers to have unfettered access to the ballot area. So when I was a little girl and my mom took me to vote and we walked in that booth and pulled that curtain and that vote was secret, that curtain will now be somebody of the opposite party standing over your shoulder. And there is nothing in this law that keeps them from doing it. In fact, the law says that the election judge has to see a violation of the law and then gives them a warning. So effectively, this law allows each partisan poll watcher one free felony. I'm a former prosecutor. Nobody gets one free felony, but that's what we're giving to these folks. And in their propaganda that they've done since this bill came out, you can see where Republican groups are recruiting from suburban areas and saying, we need you to go in here. And they are circling on their screen areas like Wheeler Avenue Baptist Church, our predominantly African-American communities, our churches, our civil rights movements, and saying, that's where we want you to go. This bill would allow the Proud Boys or any of the others to come into those polling places and have unfettered access to the voter in that spot. That's what we're talking about in this legislation.
Yeah. And this is the last question, and we'll move to closing. You know, Jarvis, we've heard about a lot of the terrible stuff that's in this bill. You know, is this racist or is this just partisan?
Straight racist. Straight, there's no question about it. This is straight racism, no matter how you look at it. They said the poll tax wasn't racist. They said the grandfather clause wasn't racist. They said, you know, any of the other tax that they put on people to stop them from voting wasn't racist, but we know it was racist. We know that they did it for the simple purpose to thwart the efforts of Black people from voting, pre-civil rights, pre-voting rights, and now today. When you look at the Black community votes consistently in blocks. 95% of the Black community votes Republican. I mean, I'm sorry, Democrat. I'm sorry. 95% of Black people vote Democratic. So at the end of the day, they understand what they're doing. They understand the growth. They understand how this bill is going to impact certain communities. I will say this, as I said to my colleagues, as they said to me, the bill applies to everyone. The bill applies to every Texan. Yeah, but it's only applicable to a certain few. Let's all remember that. The bill applies to everyone, but it's only applicable to certain people. And now that conversation is going to get very difficult because people are not going to believe the things that can happen. Because as Representative Ann Johnson has already pointed out, the Proud Boys can go into Acres Homes and, you know, stand there with their Confederate shirts on or with their, you know, with all of their, you know, whatever they do and look the way they look, and they literally can stand above someone. They literally can ask questions. They can literally say, you look like you're doing something wrong. You look like you're doing. They can literally do that. But now let me go somewhere into rural white Texas and stand in a corner and simply stare. And I guarantee you that itself is going to be intimidating. And someone is going to call the police on me because they're going to say I intimidated them. Or, but the Proud Boys, they're not, we saw what happened in Washington, D.C. They literally walked into the nation's capital without being thwarted. Black Lives Matter was standing in front of the nation's capital and they were tear gassed and shot at. There was no one storming the Capitol with Black Lives Matter, but it happens every single time. Yes, this is racist. This is racist. And I thank my colleagues that stand with us, that understand this. But for those that are across the aisle that constantly say that this is not racist, but let me say this. Today, Clardy at the congressional hearing said, and he congratulated our colleague Elsley for winning his election. And he said, this is what a fair and transparent election looks like. Elsley won. I'm confused. Okay, if that was a fair and transparent election, then why do we need your bill? Because this bill is not even applicable yet. So you just said it. You said this is already a fair and but what are they saying? It's only fair and transparent when it benefits us. So we're going to continue to do things that benefit us so that we can stay in power, because we do understand the dynamics and the demographics of Texas are changing, and we're going to do all that we can to change.
Absolutely. Well, to Representative Morales-Shaw, to the Johnson siblings, to Representative Rosenthal, we thank you all so much for being with us here today, for sharing with us the importance of the fight that you're engaged in, how you're going about that fight, and how we can help you along the way. And so we're so very grateful for you. To attendees, thank you for being here. The course number for today is 1741-297-55. I'll read that one more time, 174-129-755. And I'll turn it back over to Steve to close us out.
Chris, thanks for an excellent program, and thanks to each of you representatives. Know that we are here to support you all the way. We're in for the long haul. You can keep calling special sessions. We're going to keep supporting you every turn, everything you can do. And Odus, can you bring it home for him?
Absolutely.
Thank you, Stephen. Thank you, Stephen. Good to see you.
Thank y'all. Good to see you. Keep up the fight.
Thank you so much, Rep. Rosenthal, Rep. Johnson, Ann Johnson, who just logged off, and Rep. Penny Morales Shaw. Thank you, Chris Hollins, for I want to remind everyone, the great late Representative John Lewis told us to make noise, make good trouble, make necessary trouble. We got to be in this for the long haul. And so when we do that, please support our reps in DC. We dropped the links in the chat for the Freedom to Vote Fund. We also dropped becoming a standing member for the Harris County Democratic Party. But we also dropped the individual campaign links for these 4 reps who are making noise, who are making good trouble and necessary trouble. So be in the fight with them. Call, make phone calls, text, talk to your neighbors, talk to the press, talk to anyone you can find, because our fragile democracy right now is on the line. So with all that said, I don't want to keep our participants any longer. My name's Odus Evbagharu. I am the chair of the Harris County Democratic Party. We will see you all soon. Goodbye.
Thank you, Odus. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, all the reps. And we will see you on August 12th, either live, or we'll also offer that by Zoom video feed as well.
Take care.
At the Alamo. Thank each of you.
Okay.
And
Take care.
Thank you so much. And I look forward to meeting at Kim San. I love that place.
great.
Thank you,
Mike,
guys.
any closing
Thank
words?
you, Mike.
Thanks. Yeah,
Thank
Kim's
you,
fun. We're
Stephen.
gonna have lots of room and plenty of food.
Okay.
All
See you
right, thank
later.
y'all.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye, y'all.